מכאן לפרשה הקשורה בשמו של בן זיגייר, יליד אוסטרליה שהתאבד בחלאו בישראל. והערב מנקודת מבט יהודית אוסטרלית של הפרשה. באוסטרליה כ-120,000 יהודים, ומי שעמד בראשם, איזי ליבלר, הוא מותח ביקורת חריפה על תגובתה הרשמית של ישראל, תגובה שאיחרה לבוא וגרמה נזק עצום בהיוודע הפרשה. בראיון שקיימתי אתמול עם איזי ליבלר, שאלתי אותו מה הייתה התגובה הראשונית בקרב יהודי אוסטרליה, כאשר נודע בפעם הראשונה על הפרשה.
Very clearly, two, shock and great sense of sadness.
What did they tell? What did they say?
They didn't know what to say because they were so confused. The initial gag by the government, I think, made things a lot worse.
You mean the Israeli government?
The Israeli government made things a lot worse because the suggestion was that there were all sorts of terrible things that obviously did not take place that were being promoted by the anti-Israeli elements within the Australian media, and that made things much worse. Had the Israeli government immediately come out and said, yes, we had a security incident, yes, a boy committed suicide, yes, but at the same time there was a judge, there were 3 lawyers, and the process of law was in effect all the time, much of the initial shock would have not been eased, but it would have been more rational.
So you are telling us, Mr. Leibler, that the so-called silence of the Israeli government had an impact on the Australian Jews.
It had an impact on the Australian Jews and on the image of Israel throughout the world, because it allowed for these rumours and of suggestions of torture, suggestions of murder, and all sorts of dark things that were clearly not involved being promoted throughout the global media, particularly by those seeking to embarrass Israel. That is one of the problems of Israel Hasbara, the failure to react quickly, the inability to understand that when something bad happens, to come out and explain, you have to do it immediately, not 2 or 3 days later when the damage is done in the media.
As a result of the Pollard affair, Jews in America were accused of holding, a kind of a dual loyalty. What about Australian Jews?
That issue was brought up in the media, and I must say it was also promoted by 1 or 2 fringe groups in the Australian Jewish community known to be anti-Israeli and anti-Zionist, a very, very fringe element.
And what about so-called moderate Australians?
Moderate Australians did not buy that, but there was a suggestion at all times that maybe there's a conflict, and I say that this is something that has to be confronted. The difference between a democratic society and a totalitarian society is that the concept of dual loyalties is something that does not apply in a democratic society, because we live in a society, even we here in Israel, we have dual and triple loyalties. We have loyalties to our family, we have loyalties to our country, and if you're living in another country, you have loyalties to that country, that's permissible. That's not dual loyalties. Dual loyalties is when those two conflict starkly, and if and when such a situation arises, you decide what you're going to do. But that was not the case here. There were no dual loyalties, and the people were trying to go back to what I call an old galut mentality. It's a galut mentality, the dual loyalties. It doesn't apply in any democratic society, and particularly not in a multicultural society like Australia, which is such a melting pot of different people. It was brought up against Israel and the Jews by people that want to embarrass Israel, but I don't believe that will go very far.
Tell me, Mr. Leibler, what is your advice to the Mossad? The Mossad is using Jews, in this case in Australia or in America. They are holding foreign passport. What are you advising the Mossad? Not to continue with this procedure?
I'm saying that as a citizen of Israel today, I do not give advice to Mossad. I do say that as a citizen of Israel, I should say that when Mossad recruit people, they should be extremely cautious in ensuring that they only recruit the most sophisticated type of people, and that they don't recruit people who are not necessarily equipped to deal with such situations, because it is a very, very sensitive area in which one gets involved in if one's going to be doing serious things for Mossad. And maybe, I don't know whether, but maybe this young man, this tragic young man, was not properly equipped and should not have been recruited.
You do not approve, Mr. Leibler, the use of Australian passport by maybe Israelis for the purpose of espionage or spying?
I don't like to make statements on such matters. What I like to say is that if we don't do it for the Americans, we shouldn't do it for someone who's equally as close to Australia, if not close, or at least as close to Australia as America. That's what I would like to say. I can't tell Mossad what they should do. They are there to protect our security, and I believe they have a very, very important role. And even if mistakes and terrible tragedies happen, this is one of the most important instruments of our country, and we should all be proud of the fact that it operates under the law and under a system which is not inconsistent with a democratic state, which is surrounded by a siege and by hostility that no other country in the world meets.
Mr. Isi Leibler, thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom to you.
Shabbat Shalom to you, and thank you.
Thank you.